Welcome back to the best year of your life. We are in conversation today with Regina Lark. I'm going to begin by sharing a little bit about Regina and then we'll get started. Dr. Regina Lark is a featured speaker and educator on issues ranging from productivity, hoarding, and women's leadership. In 2008, she founded A Clear Path, Professional Organizing and Productivity. As a certified professional organizer, CPO, Regina specializes in boomer and senior downsizing, residential organizing, and life transitions. She has a certification in chronic disorganization and also works with clients challenged by ADHD and other brain-based conditions. Dr. Lark is a current board member of Opeka Adult Daycare Center and published her third book, Emotional Labor, Why a Woman's Work is Never Done and What to Do About It, in October of 2021. Welcome, everyone. Today is day 9 of the summit, and our focus is on simplicity and earth-friendly living. And I am very much looking forward to this conversation with thought leader, organizing, and productivity specialist, Regina Lark. Welcome, Regina. Thank you for being here today. How are you?
So nice to be here.
Yes. So let's begin with learning about your pathway into your work as organizing and productivity specialist. In a world full of too much stuff, how did you become interested in organizing and simplifying?
Well, I had to eat. And so that's always a great motivator. I finished a PhD in women's history at the University of Southern California when I was 41 years old. And from 40 to 50, I was working in higher education. So I was an adjunct professor of history and women's studies at different colleges around Los Angeles County. And then I was hired at UCLA as a program director. So I'm sort of shifting away from teaching and doing more administrative type of work. And in June of 2008, I had gone to Jerusalem to visit a really good friend of mine. And while I was there, I said, Nadra, I don't want to be a tourist today. How about if I do your kitchen? And she's like, Habibti, what does that mean? And I said, Nadra, I know your girls are in their 30s and you got sippy cups in the cupboard. Just let me do what I do. And so not just let me do what I do. And it was a good result. I don't think anything of it. I go back to my desk at UCLA. And 1 week later, to the day, I learned that my unit was being dismantled. My position was being eliminated. It was 2008. The budget cuts had arrived. And honestly, Melissa, the job wasn't a great fit for me, personally or professionally. So in that moment, I thought, the goddess of jobs is doing for me what I was not able to do for myself. Yes. I left 9 days later, and 2 months into my layoff, I'm recognizing I'm 50. I'm in the land of opportunity. I live in Los Angeles, and I have the highest degree in the land. I need a job. So I told my roommate, I'm going to organize until something better comes along, and nothing has.
I love that story. So what do you believe are the root causes behind why we accumulate clutter? And what do you believe are the real questions we should be asking when tackling these issues?
Well, when I started my company, I came across a couple of clients. My first few clients, I was so curious about the volume of stuff. Mm-hmm. And I was also curious. So here's one example. I met with somebody and call her Mary, and Mary had a lot of paper clutter. And so we worked on a pile of paper, and then we scheduled for me to go back the next week. And I said, before I come back, Mary, why don't you work on this section? And she goes, great, sure, no problem. When I went back, not only was that section not worked on, but there were a lot of other piles that had emerged in the week between our visit. And I was very curious about that. Honestly, I thought I would have done what was asked. Yeah. If I had hired, and this is Regina saying, if I hired an organizer, I would have done what the organizer asked. People who need a professional organizer in their life are usually chronically disorganized. And so often, it's not 100% of the time. So, So I was curious about what kept her from activating on that instruction. Mm-hmm. And then within that month, I guess, I'm new at this, within that month, I came across another client, And I'm only in her place for like 15 or 20 minutes. And she holds up a very benign object. And it was her deceased mom's eyeglass case. And it was lovely and it was embroidered. And it was, it's fine. It was in good shape.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, should I let this go? And I was thinking, wow, you've only known me for 20 minutes and it feels like you're asking permission to let something go. And again, I was very curious about that. So within my first year of organizing, I learned of the Institute for Challenging Disorganization. And ICD, the Institute for Challenging Disorganization, is where mental health professionals meet professional organizers. And it's a lot of amazing learning. And so I availed myself to all the coursework and certification available at the time to become a subject matter expert in working with people with brain-based conditions. So to answer your question, I think a lot of people with a lot of clutter in their lives, I believe, in my experience and observations, the starting point is a not highly functioning executive function of the brain. So I'm going to do a brain talk for a moment.
Good, thanks. Because you saw I kind of looked confused. I'm like, you're going to have to explain that one.
So, as humankind developed, eons ago, mm-hmm. the first brain matter that develops in our cranium is called the amygdala. Okay. And we know it as fight or flight. Yep. So I think of Lily, the cave woman. She comes out of the cave and she sees a very soothing body of water, and she doesn't have language for what that is, but her brain reacts to, oh, that looks lovely, and I'm going to dive right in. Okay. She could easily come out of her cave and see a saber-toothed tiger. She doesn't have the words for it. She's like, get the hell out. Right. So the fight or flight brain is what served to protect us and served to fair enough. As our cranium develops about 50 or 75,000 years ago, mm-hmm. where we're at and where we're at today. And again, don't quote me on the timeline, but what has developed in our brain is what's called the prefrontal cortex. It's the gray matter. And in that prefrontal cortex resides our executive functions. And the executive function part of your brain allows you to be on time, on task, linear, sequential. You have a good relationship with time. You are able to manage your emotions. The executive function of our brain allows us to create a to-do list and check it off and complete those goals. Folks with anxiety, depression, ADHD, neurological challenges, major life transitions can knock your executive function offline for a while. Okay. Folks that are born with these brain-based conditions like ADHD and anxiety and depression, what those conditions affect, among other things, are the executive functions. So people with a lot of clutter tend to have one of these brain-based conditions. And as a result of that, they may be brilliant in their professional lives. Yeah. But they can't hang up their clothes. The tedious, mind-numbing, boring, and repetitive tasks, we'd rather look at kittens on Facebook. I mean, right. So this idea that the executive function keeps us linear and sequential and steady versus the excitement center of our brain. Okay. If the executive functions are weak or challenged or compromised for whatever reason, mm-hmm. we will default to the excitement center of our brain because it's a much more pleasurable place to be.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That literally was my going into my third question. So you have already answered that. Now, the follow-up question to that, which I think I can assume, but of course you're the expert, so you're going to answer it. Can this organizational skill be taught if obviously this is what you do, but can it be taught for once you do leave the house and have organized and whatever, and they're left to themselves? Can this be taught?
Sure. It's simple but not easy. Here's the big challenge.
Okay.
I have a big company. Our team, they're called the ninja organizers. So the ninjas go in and they can transform any space in a matter of hours, days, or weeks. Okay. We just get in there, we roll up our sleeves, we get to the goal. We talk about need versus use versus want versus value. Mm-hmm. We talk about what does cleared space look like, feel like, smell like. And then we activate on that and we clear the path. In order to maintain a cleared path, all you have to do is completely change everything inside of you, along with your habits, your behaviors, and your relationships with your stuff and your space. Simple, but not easy, right? So I hear this a lot. Well, once you leave, don't they go back to? No one's going back to anything. They're continuing a behavior that led them to me. So, in order to maintain a transformed space, we suggest to our clients, we're going to check in with you 30, 60, 90 days. Talk to me about what you see. Talk to me about what you're observing about yourself, because most of the mess is a result of a habitual relationship to that armchair. That's where the clothes get thrown. Yeah. The dishes piled up in the sink is a result of probably having a crappy relationship with time, not knowing really how long it takes you to do the dishes. People with a lousy relationship with time seem to not have a fully functioning internal clock. I could close my eyes and be quiet, and I could probably let you know when 1 minute has passed.
Yeah.
A lot of folks aren't able to do that. So we help our clients to just start observing yourself in your space once the space is cleared. So for example, say your organizer says, okay, after we leave, herein, all your mail is going to go from the mailbox to this shelf. Mm-hmm. Whatever y'all decide, this is what's going to happen with the mail. And the first few days of post-organizing, you're doing it. The mail is going to that shelf. But one day it may not. And be curious about why you didn't do it that day. Just be curious, because a lot of people with clutter tend to really shit on themselves when it comes to the head trash, what I call psychic debris. It's all the stuff in our head that we have decided what's wrong with us. There's something wrong with us. This comparative analysis. Mm-hmm. And is the death knell to me. Whenever I compare myself to anybody, I'm done. I've lost the race. So when the mail gets put somewhere else, go, oh, the phone was ringing. Oh, I'm hungry. Oh, I had a lot of stuff in my hand. Just be curious and say, you don't go, you idiot. The organizer said this and you did this. What's wrong with you? No. Yeah. I encourage people to develop a sense of curiosity without judgment, without labeling, without resenting ourselves or others.
Yeah. When you go into these houses, we obviously know there's the problem. You're there to provide a solution. Do a lot of people just go in there saying, I just need somebody to help me organize this for whatever reason? I just cannot get this right. I cannot figure this out. Do they know that there is a brain, I'm not going to use the right word, like brain issue, or do they become aware of this?
No, they think there's something wrong with them. They think they're lazy. I hear lazy a lot. I'm lazy, and I don't believe in lazy. Yeah. I really don't. I think there's always an underlying reason why we don't activate on something.
Right.
It could be that we're tired. It could be we have a low blood sugar. It could be that this is not our skill set.
Mm-hmm.
What I find so interesting is the tasks of the household tend to be invisible, undervalued, unacknowledged. Every task has a series of invisible sequences. So I think of making a dental appointment for a kid, and so you don't just call a dentist and make an appointment. You have to ask your parent friends, and you have to find out who's the good dentist, and you have to consider when you can leave your paid work so you could pick up your child from school. I mean, there's so many unacknowledged, invisible tasks to get to that thing, to get to the end. And most people aren't seeing their world through the lens of the executive function, and dare I say, all of these tasks that I'm describing at home tend to fall onto the shoulders of the female in the household, as if she's wearing a giant set of shoulder pads. The weight of it is just right there, as if it's part of her DNA. And if I think of all these women that have had all these prescriptions for how you're supposed to be female and motherly and wifely in the home, and if you've got ADHD or any other type of brain-based condition, my gosh, I just think of centuries of women who have, been trained to socialize culturally, religiously, all of it, to be that person in the home. And if she's got these other things going on with the executive function, oh my God.
There's more going on. Yes. And we are definitely getting to that in a couple more questions. So thank you for bringing that up. I want to talk more a little bit about the shame part that you had mentioned. You've said that there's a psychological connection between clutter and shame. And it's obviously interesting that you think of clutter this way. So how do we take the shame out of clutter?
Quit listening to other people. Take down the interest page. I honestly, it's just stuff. It's a reflection on how your brain is wired than who you are as a magnificent human being. It really is. And the head trash that we walk around with is so weighty. I don't think we came out of the chute. I don't think we were born to feel like crap about ourselves. So where does that come from? One of the reasons I don't like before and after pictures in our declutter work, because I don't want anybody to measure themselves against anything but their own personal journey.
Yeah.
So if we can just look at it through the lens of anything else that isn't going to put us down.
Yeah.
I think that's one movement that we can take to move to sort of sidle away from these really crappy things we hold near and dear to us. I often wonder, what's our investment in holding on to these shitty messages? I don't know. I don't know.
All right.
Walking in your shoes. And so I don't know why people are holding on to these messages, but you weren't born to have that message. And I see the world through the lens of perspective. I have one, you have one. And my perspective, if my perspective is that my mess and clutter makes me a bad person, then that's going to be my perspective. If I can shift that perspective and say my stuff and clutter is a reflection of my wiring, it's just another perspective.
Yeah. It's interesting that you said, like why do people carry around this head trash, and that you don't, obviously know the answer. And I had a perspective last night that I was thinking about because, of trauma and things that are going on in my life. And I'm like, why am I this way? Well, why isn't always the greatest question because we know the answer. We're like, trauma. Okay, so go on to the next. But then the answer became almost like, Well, if you were never taught in a way, or if you were like always put down this head trash, like starting straight out of the womb of you're not good enough, you're this, you're that, anything that we could take on, how would we know any other way?
Sure.
And then we have to literally learn a whole nother perspective to truly trust that we are enough, or we can do this, we're capable, we can not be unorganized.
Right.
It's very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, and there's so many resources available, and some of them just aren't that great. I look at there's a ton of how to get organized books.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I don't think well of most of them because, and of course I haven't read them, but
right.
What I understand about my industry is we want to make it look good, we want to make it look pretty. Where I come from, I want to make it safe and habitable and functional.
Yeah.
So again, there are all kinds of resources that are available to us. But honestly, to help shift your thinking, another suggestion is to talk about how you feel with people that you really know, love, and trust, because we tend to internalize that sense of shame. Yes. And we tend to be very nonverbal about it.
Right.
And so I'm going to encourage you to be very verbal about it, so the people that you know and love and trust the most can help start talking you off that ledge.
Yes. There is a Brené Brown quote that says, when you have a conversation with somebody and you share empathy, shame can no longer exist. And
okay, I agree.
Yeah. I'm like, that is such a perfect quote, because it's so right. And you do have to be verbal about it and say how you're feeling to know, hey, you're not alone. I do this too. So thank you for sharing that very much. All right. So in your latest book, Emotional Labor, Why a Woman's Work is Never Done and What to Do About It, you present an incredibly powerful concept you call emotional labor, which we've talked about. This largely invisible load that women carry that you have now named and made visible is really eye-opening. So let's start with what is an emotional labor and how does this harm the household setup?
So many ways. So here's the quote. A man can work from sun to sun, but a woman's work is never done. That quote is almost 150 years old, and it begs three questions. What the hell is women's work? Why is it never done? And who said work had to be gendered? Okay, so those are the three working premises. So I'm going to speak in very general terms. Females and males are socialized very differently from the time they're small to today, to the time they become adults. And it is no surprise that females tend to be socialized and enculturated with being taught. I'm going to back up a moment. I know that not all females are taught the skills of homemaking, but taught or not, there's this expectation you're going to do it. Okay.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether you have a brain-based condition, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because again, I want to belabor that point. In order to maintain a well-managed home, the first thing you actually need is not a vagina, but a well-functioning executive function. We've been referencing the wrong body part. So the work of the household is work. There's nothing womanly about the work. But when you have this very unequal, when you have inequity at home, and when I talk about inequity, I talk about the distribution of labor in the household. If we were to say the phrase men's work, rarely do we think of vacuuming. When we say the phrase women's work, it's all about the home, even though we have female Supreme Court justices and judges in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and we have CEOs and investors, and those are women. that's work. We don't think of it as women's work.
Right.
Because the work of the household is women's work. Anything women do outside of that, they have had to get to that, kicking and screaming and fighting and burning their bras, right? Okay. So when you start out a relationship with gender inequity, because usually the work of the household that males are, there's that expectation. We laugh. The feminists for decades have been laughing about the chores that men do at home by and large. And again, I'm speaking in very general terms.
Yep.
But laundry is nonstop. Sort, wash, dry, fold, put away, rinse and repeat. Sort, wash, dry. The lawn, you're done at the end of the day, and you do it once a month. The garage, the tasks that are typically performed by the males of the household are short and sweet and often done. The tasks that are typically assigned to the female of the household, it's the longest job description in history. If a full-time homemaker walked off the job tomorrow, to replace her in a middle-class household would be about $150,000 a year. And I don't know how much of the overtime that includes, because as we know, the work of the household is 24/7. Since the murder of George Floyd, we have had national conversations about racial and gender equality. What does equity look like? But my goodness, if we're not experiencing gender equity at home, how the hell are we supposed to recognize it in the paid workplace?
Exactly.
So I just had a light bulb moment.
Ooh, let's hear it.
We're not experience gender equity at home. How do we recognize it in the paid workplace? And does that have to do with the disparity of wages between women and men? I think that I'm onto something. Actually, I am.
Yeah.
So it's got so many layers to it, both within the household. So if we had true gender equity, if there was a true partnership in the household, instead of one adult saying, "How can I help you?" And if you're asking that person, "How can I help you?" what you're saying is that this job, the dishwasher, the clothes, the permission slips, the grocery shopping is yours, and I'm going to help you do it. What if the adults in the household engaged instead in what my collaborator, Judith Kohlberg, who I did my book with, she came up with the term radical delegation. And radical delegation is delegating to get it done, not delegating to who's best suited to it. When I hire people in my company, I hire them because of a particular skill set. Of course, I would do that.
Right.
I'm not going to hire somebody just to hire somebody.
Yeah.
In the household, we tend to default to the person who's best suited to the work. And if she's raised and trained and enculturated and socialized to do the work, that will never promote equality. That's not fair.
No.
I have so many women say, "Well, my husband said he'd do the laundry, but I got it back 2 weeks later because I'm better at it." And I'm saying, put him in front of YouTube. It's like, come on, people. When I tell cisgender women that when two gay guys get together and start their lives together, there's no gender division of labor. They have to talk about it. They have to figure it out. They have to get the work done because the work needs to get done.
That's how it should be. Right. Like a conversation, right?
And an ongoing conversation. Another component of my book is what I call the emotional labor life cycle. So I think, what kind of world would we live in? What kind of households could we create if the adults in the home could look ahead 1, 3, 5, 10 years and begin radically delegating, preemptively radically delegating. And I'll tell you a really quick story. I was talking to a woman, and she's a full-time attorney, works from home. And as a result of working from home, she's seen as the person that's also taking care of everything at home.
Yeah.
And she's got a 1 and a 3-year-old. And she said this to me: my husband, his job takes him out of the home. He's in IT. He works in an office. She goes, I can see it now. I'm already overwhelmed. But when the kids start having play dates, that's going to be, because he's not home, that's going to be another thing for me. And I said, not so. If he's in front of a computer all day, then his part is connecting with the parents, setting up the schedule, deciding where they're going. All you have to do is get them there. So again, how do you preemptively anticipate all of the invisible tasks associated with every single project, play dates? What are all those invisible tasks? Making the phone calls, which parents do we want to connect? Who are our parent friends, and did our kids get along? All of that mental load can be shared, and you can partner with the other adult in the house on all of it.
So, oh my gosh,
so much.
Yeah. Do you feel, because just thinking on my past experiences, that if this was brought to a man, and they might look at you like you have two heads and saying, well, this is how it's been for years. Not that hopefully a man wouldn't come out and say that, but they might, like, this is what my dad did with my mom, and this and this. How do we get those men to understand where you're coming from? Like, what does an actual literal conversation, how do you start that conversation so the man doesn't shut down and just say, you're crazy, lady. Like, I'm bringing in all this money, or I'm bringing in the money, you do this. How does that start for us to get them to even become aware of how much invisible projects there really are?
There aren't many households that are solo wage earners. Most households are dual income.
Yeah.
Most. So I'm going to talk about the dual income household.
Okay.
Because even if she's making more money, she's also doing, statistically, new report from Forbes just came out, she's statistically doing more of the household labor.
Okay.
The higher her wages, the more work she's doing at home. One woman said, and I had posted this on LinkedIn, one woman said, well, men shouldn't feel so emasculated if women are earning more money. And, women should stop feeling that they're emasculating men when they're earning more money. And I'm like, men need to stop feeling emasculated. Isn't this for the higher good of the family? Isn't this for the uplift and elevation of everybody? Okay, right. Short of that, simply put, dual wage household, this is when I hear this a lot. It bothers me, it doesn't bother him. My thought is, if it bothers you, isn't that enough for him? Isn't that enough? How come you're not doing everything you can to mitigate how she feels about it? Okay, so I don't see much of that. The one strategy would be for each adult in the household to go into a separate room and write down everything they do for the household. Just write it down. And then compare and contrast. And then look at what may need to be offloaded to the other. And if neither one wants it, outsource or let it go. But we've got to get very real and have deliberate dialogues about what is going on in the household. We've got to make the invisible glaring. We've got to put a big red bow on it. We've got to make the invisible glaring for the other adult to get a sense of the volume of work. And not only that, what does it take to do the work? It takes a set of cognitive skills, right? The executive function needs to be percolating at all times. So if either one of them are dealing with brain-based conditions, that has to be looked at. if they have been in it for a long time and all they do is fight about it, and one of them just retreats going, fine, I will load the dishwasher, we need to enlist the services of a mental health professional. I mean, yeah. The reason why 1 and 2 marriages end up in divorce has probably a lot to do with one person carrying the brunt of the emotional labor, the mental load, and the physical work of the household. There's no doubt in my mind. So I would love to see men become invested in the role of caregiver. I would love to unleash men in the household so that we can unleash women into the world. Oh. The work of caregiving has been too long the sole domain of women. And I'm not clear why more men aren't stepping into this. I don't understand it.
Yeah.
It starts out, these relationships, heterosexual couplings start out, I think, inherently unequal, because we still hear men asking women to marry them, giving them a token, a ring. The ring is a possession.
Yep.
Right? Women aren't giving engagement rings to their men. So women wait to get asked to get married. And then often, not 100% of the time, I know things have changed and are changing, but often a male will give her away.
Yeah.
And then often she will change her last name to his. So he kind of remains top dog throughout. It's his name, it's his ring,
Yep.
So I think that culturally speaking, we sort of start this journey out a little uneven. And then as the journey continues, and especially if those conversations sort of stop because everyone's busy, you will definitely see that gender inequity at home.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing that I wanted to mention to you that might be obvious, but might not be obvious to people when we're talking about this, with no, I guess, pun intended, this laundry list of what women are doing, is also the energy that goes into this, the time and actual energy that women, they're supposed to be doing all this stuff, where energy, it's limited. You don't just have copious amounts where you can just be going 100 miles an hour all parts of the day, where I guess that needs to be brought up. Everything that we are doing from the invisible tasks are taking time and energy, brain power, all the above.
Yeah, I mean, there was a bath commercial, bath stuff that you can add to your bath, Calgon, and the tagline for the Calgon commercials, it's women's bath salts or something, was Calgon, take me away. Calgon, take me away. And one woman said to me not too long ago, she goes, there's not enough Calgon on the planet. It's just like, it doesn't stop.
Yes.
So I think women need to start talking with other women about what's going on, being really real and honest. Back in the 70s, we called it consciousness raising. In the 21st century, we could just call it deliberate dialogues with our gal pals and talk about what each other does to preserve that sense of selfhood, energy. I know a lot of women, when they are training for a marathon or wanting to do a weekend with their gal pals or finishing up a master's degree, when they're taking the time, when they're carving out the time to do those tasks that will uplift and elevate them professionally or personally, they do it often with a great sense of guilt. And I think a lot of the guilt comes from all this shit that they've left undone.
Yeah.
Right? They've left all this stuff undone because we don't delegate. We don't radically delegate. I mean, delegation is huge, a huge part of moving away from this inequity.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I'm just absolutely loving this conversation, even
Me
way
too.
more so than I than I thought I was going to. This is amazing. You offer bite-sized tips to help people clear and organize their world. In one of the videos, you talk about taking out the head trash, like we've talked about already. Can you talk us through how we can clear negativity, simplify our thinking, and embrace the best versions of ourselves as we embark on the best year of our lives?
Well, I encourage everyone to embrace the art and practice of positive affirmation. Honestly, I can't say enough about that. I am a believer in shifting my thinking, again, my perspective.
Yeah.
I trust the process of life. All right and good action takes place in my life. Say it over and over and over. I'm a badass. I'm beautiful. I'm brilliant. None of my ideas are bad. All of my ideas are good. It's really perspective, and it's talking the talk so that you can learn to walk the walk. A lot of people, I go into homes, honestly, Melissa, and there's all of those affirmations on their wall that they bought at Bed Bath & Beyond.
Yeah.
And their house is a train wreck. And I think they're talking the talk, but they haven't learned to walk the walk. And so it's a mind body, but I believe it starts with this idea of conceive, believe, and achieve. What my mind can conceive and believe, it will achieve, given my understanding of how my brain functions and operates. Not everybody is like me.
Yeah.
But really, it's a constant reminder of how truly bitchin' we are.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. I love it. I love it. And those affirmations, because whatever comes out of your mouth, or even if you say it internally to yourself, your subconscious will take as true or anything. And, obviously, if we believe we can or can't, that's why we say that, because the brain will just believe if you believe you can't, then you're not going to do it, because that's what you're telling the brain. So those affirmations are so important, because it is playing tricks on the brain, and eventually you'll start believing it and taking action. And so thank you. Well, as we move towards the end of our time together today, what are some final things you can share with our audience in order to make this the best year of their lives?
Pay attention to every single thing you bring through your front door.
Oh,
If it's got to live someplace. So here's my principle. I don't like being inconvenienced. So I don't have a lot of stuff, because I don't want to move something to get something, to use it and then lay it down because it's too hard to put back. I want ease of use. I don't want being inconvenienced. I also will never pay for external storage. So those are my two principles. In order to maintain those two principles, I have to be judicious and aggressive about everything that comes through my front door. What gets to live with me? Things that bring me up aesthetically. I like lovely things.
Yeah.
Things that bring me up intellectually. I'm a curious person. But the things that bring me up intellectually have to fit in my bookcase without double stacking, because it's too inconvenient to.
Yeah.
And the other thing that gets to live with me is like shampoo and milk, things that I use every day.
I love that. That is amazing. I mean, just some of your stuff that you say is so quote worthy, and it seems so obvious. Like, it has to live someplace. You're right. Once you bring it into your home, you have to find a space for it.
Right.
And figure it out. And hopefully it's not at the top of your closet, or that it probably shouldn't be there. Well, Regina, thank you so much for everything that you have shared with us today. Can you please tell people where they can find out more about you and your work?
Sure. So for the emotional labor work, go to reginalark.com. And for my work in the area of declutter and organizing and ADHD, go to aclearpath.com. Also, I want to tell your listeners that I run an ADHD group virtually every month from January to June and September to November, and it's called West LA Chad, CHADD. You can find it on meetup.com. That's West LA Chad. And CHAD is an acronym for Children and Adults of ADD. And it's free. And I bring in speakers from all over the country. And it's a really great, resource for adult ADHDers.
Beautiful. Well, Regina, this has been amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Melissa. This is what a pleasure to speak with you. Good questions.
Awesome. Thank you.